Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Area 312 Rock and Metal Vodcast. I'm one of your hosts, Kent, along with my co-host,
Rex.
Friends, today our very special guest. He's back for a second time, but he brought the low end to his band, and along with his bandmates, delivered what Heaven's Metal magazine called the best Christian metal album of all time. As well, Cross Rhythms magazine stated that their debut album breathed much needed freshness into the somewhat stale white metal scene. Doug Van Pelt, the creator of Heaven's Metal, has stated about their debut album that it was the most radical Christian album ever released. With all apologies on our behalf to Stryper, Campus Life magazine stated that the debut album made Stryper sound like Sandy Patty. Friends, today we are celebrating 35 years of human sacrifice with the founding member who held down the fort on bass, the one and only Roger Dale Martin. Roger Dale, welcome. It's an honor, sir.
Well, thank you, Ken. I appreciate you inviting me.
Yes, sir. It truly is an honor. And Roger Dale, the core of our episode, we wish to discuss this incredible album that I first heard 35 years ago. And, who could forget? I still have it in different variations. But before we do that, Roger Dale, let's talk about some recent news. And Rex, I know you've been able to go to Immortal Fest, and I know Roger Dale and company have been to Immortal Fest. Let's discuss that first.
Yeah, I didn't get to go to part 2, Roger, but I did see pictures, and you guys had Luke Easter doing vocals. It seemed really awesome. I saw some still shots of Nick tearing it up and you two. And so it just, how was it there playing at Immortal Fest? I mean, that'd be the first time you guys even played live together, correct?
Yeah, that was the first time. Actually, I met Luke in person on Friday night, and then I met Nick in person on Saturday afternoon, and we had our first rehearsal backstage. We had some little bitty amps like this, and Jim was playing on the bass, and we had our first rehearsal, and then we went out there and played the show.
And you did the whole record, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, we did. We did all 10 songs on the album, and I thought it went fantastic. We had a lot of good stage presence. We had chemistry on stage, and everybody told us that. Mm-hmm. And so, as far as Immortal Fest, it was a wonderful experience. Man, it's more than a music festival, because it's a place where we can go that we're not. First of all, it's out in the country, out in the cornfields, and just beautiful country.
Yeah,
and we're away from any kind of urban development, and the people were ready for us. A lot of people asked, "Are you with the festival? Are you with the festival?" The local townspeople were fantastic. They weren't afraid of us, and they welcomed us there. And as far as the gig, Rex, it was, oh my gosh, it was a place where you could relax. You could leave your cell phone somewhere on the table and not worry about it. I mean, you could actually leave a wallet on the table and come back 30 minutes, it'd be there. And that atmosphere, as you never hardly see it anymore. Of course, the venue was wonderful. It sounded great. Sound guys, the light crew, it was just a fantastic experience.
Yeah, and it is hard to describe, and you've done a good job of describing that, like just the whole atmosphere. And my wife's actually going to go with me to part 2 on Labor Day weekend, and it's just like a big family reunion. It really is one of the best ways I would describe it. I can't wait to see everyone from last year, be it bands and friends I've made, and like you said, you just can relax there. You don't got to worry about is someone gonna take my phone or my wallet, and the staff is wonderful. It is just like a family atmosphere there at the whole place.
Yes, it was. There was a lot of Vengeance fans, because this podcast is focusing on Vengeance. I talked to so many Vengeance fans and those fans are very sincere. And when they approach me, It feels good. They're very reverent. They're you know, they got their hands behind their back and they're waiting. And if I'm talking to somebody else, they're very nice and polite. And then when I do get to talk to them, they tell me their story, and I just warms my heart. It's just amazing. And to me, it was the perfect timing for Reign of Glory to go out and play because it was the 35th anniversary, and I just happened to have some Vengeance merch there to sell. that was really good timing. It was fantastic. It was one of the best shows I've played in my life. Of course, Vengeance has some big gigs, but as far as the overall atmosphere, the professionalism, it was unmatched. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
From everything that I've seen, and we're going to start rocking along here, but from everything I've seen online, Roger Dale, about Reign of Glory and the pictures and people talking about you guys, from my perspective looking in on it, it seems like you guys went over really well and people loved you. So congratulations to all you guys. I'm also very happy for our friend Luke Easter. You know what my favorite part about Luke is, Roger Dale?
What?
He rocks such a wonderful haircut. I love his haircut. He's always in style.
You know, we didn't coordinate that. I didn't call him and say, what kind of haircut you want? And that's a good thing as far as heavy metal goes. You know, as you age, some people lose their hair, and I did. But shave that noggin, man, and it's good. It's metal. It takes a lot of guts to shave your head for the first time because you really don't know what your skull looks like. Now, I've seen some guys shave their head and they look like a bag of rocks. You know, they're knots all over their head. So.
Well, there are those of us, Roger Dale. I imagine you're in this category. In fact, you probably set the mold, but there are those of us who headbang so hard and so much that it just all comes out when we're headbanging. So I get it.
That's a good theory because believe me, I did my part. I definitely did my share of headbanging.
I remember that hair whipping around, seeing you and stuff. So Roger Dale, really quick. Now we're moving on into Vengeance territory, but for our friends who maybe had missed the episode where you and Nick Layton of Reign of Glory blessed us with that episode. I think that might have been our last episode of 2022. But let's recap really quick, Roger Dale. If you could just tell a little bit again about maybe music in the home and what influenced you to take the path that you did. And I seem to remember you also being, like me, a big Grand Funk fan.
Well, okay. Now, I'm trying to get to the core of your question, Kent. What is the core of your question?
What were some of your musical influences in your home?
Oh, okay. Well, my musical influence was, I really got into bass with Grand Funk Railroad, Mel Shaker, however you pronounce his name. He had a big fat tone, and they were a three-piece band. And Mel played a lot of riffs. He was riff driven, if that makes any sense. He played the melody riff in the background and they just go off on that. Great tone. And I like how they looked on the first album. They had the puffy sleeves and I was all into that. And even way before that, the Rolling Stones did a song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. And it was actually a fuzz bass that started that line. And so loving the bass started a long time ago, kid. It was kind of a love affair from the very beginning.
Roger Dale, I have yet to come across this album. Friends have recommended it to me. My journey hasn't led me there yet, but I know prior to Vengeance, you were in a band called Emerald. And if you don't mind telling us about the history of that band, how that came together, and maybe the style of that band.
That band came together. I was very fortunate to as soon as I stepped foot in California. I arrived in Los Angeles, California on Halloween night, 1984. And the very next day, I met Dave Enos in a music store, and he was looking for a bass player, and we had an audition right there. He started playing Crazy Train by Ozzy, and I knew it note for note, and I basically passed the audition right there in the music store, and that's how that got going. Dave was a big fan of, he was pretty melodic metal. He was a big fan of Uli John Roth, and he was the first guitar player in the Scorpions, or maybe it was the main guitar player a long time ago, and he was greatly influenced by that type of music. It had a lot of musical substance. We looked like a glam band, but the music was more advanced than you say, like a Motley Crue or that type of thing. And that's how they had already, Dave and Kyle Moret, it was the guitar and the drummer. So I just kind of moved right into their band, and went into rehearsals, and those guys taught me the work ethic, the California work ethic, which was basically rehearsing every night. And so that's how I got my start in music in California. I think that I was 26 years old at the time, old enough, mature enough to pull it off, and young enough to pull it off, if that makes sense. For me personally, it was the perfect time in my life to begin music there in the California music scene.
Yes, sir. So Roger Dale, I was curious about that, because my first encounter with you and on my journey was, of course, the original in 1988. I had the cassette, Human Sacrifice by Vengeance. And so I was curious about Emerald, because I'd like to ask now, if you don't mind, how and when did Vengeance form?
Okay, that I'll tell you a little bit of insight into Vengeance. When I was in Emerald, we lost our singer, and but no, this was even before we lost our singer. I'd heard about a Bible study somewhere, and this guy was supposed to be really good, and this was while I was in Emerald, and I went and saw Roger Martinez. He had a seminar called Take Heed Ministry, and what he would do, he would show album covers from like AC/DC or some of these bands, and go, look, these bands are satanic. He brought out the sinful qualities of these albums, and how it could be labeled as satanic. And he was part of those guys who were, and had his thing. And when I met him, and I talked to him later, and he was really, he was thinking about starting a thrash band. And even when I was in Emerald, he called me one time. This is Roger Martinez. He said, Roger, I'm doing this thrash band. And I said, no, I can't. He asked me to play bass, and I said, no, I'm not going to, because thrash was brand new, and glam metal was still king. And I had some momentum going with Emerald, and I was in another band, but it was all glam. And I didn't want to switch gears. I had some stuff going on, and I told him no. But sooner or later, Emerald was looking for a vocalist, and I'm telling you, I don't know how, but Janice Sweet, which is Michael Sweet's mom, she somehow told me, look, you go over to Sanctuary and you'll find a vocalist over there. And then I went to Sanctuary, and I met Pastor Bob, and this was the very beginning of Sanctuary. And I was on the worship team and everything like that. And I played in a band called Holy Rock for a little while. And how it all, the first thing I remember about Vengeance was Bob asking me and Doug to come into his office. And he had been, at the time, it was all heavy metal. It was white metal at the time. The music was kind of like Poison, Guns N' Roses, and stuff like that. And there weren't any really thrash bands at the time. And he started mentoring a guy named Steve Bartram. Steve Bartram was a drummer for a thrash band. And it was just me and Doug in the office. And he said, I've got this vision for a speed metal band. We didn't call it thrash, we called it speed metal. And so I remember that, and I'm going, that sounds good to me. And my next memory, and I don't know, it happened pretty quick, but the next memory I have was rehearsing with Glenn Rogers and Steve Bartram. Somehow Bob had got us together, so it was just four of us. And we were together about 2 weeks at the most. And I remember 2 rehearsals. And Glenn Rogers was he had some songs, and Doug had one song, and Steve Roger played drum, and Glenn was actually singing during these rehearsals. It's just a couple, but he introduced the groundwork for like human sacrifice and White Throne and two or three others. Kind of like a blueprint or a foundation, you might say. But that didn't work out. Next thing you know, it was like it was disbanded. It was a real short thing. I mean, we just, once again, I remember 2 rehearsals. There might have been 3, but no more than a couple of weeks. And then after that, it was me and Doug. It was just us. And we really didn't play any music right then, Kent. We just started going to these shows. Pastor Bob was like, once you find out what's happening, and then we started going to the speed metal shows, and it was quite the education for me because I'd grown up on Ted Nugent and Aerosmith and these type of bands, and we'll get that, and that was the best thing we could have done. Rather than, I mean, I listened a little bit, but mostly we went to these shows, and that gave us the education. I saw a mosh pit for the first time, and I learned the intensity. We learned the intensity of music. It was 99% male, very young, lots of testosterone fueled stuff. It was tough people with tough music, and I remember that. And then me and Doug we started trying to play, putting a band together, and we went through a lot of people. I remember one time. We got way off path. We got Mike Betts on the drums from Neon Cross, and he almost lost it there. He really wasn't the drummer for us. He tried, and we did the best we could with him. He's a great big dude, and he just wasn't fast enough. And he tried, and we tried to make it work. And there was a woman on vocals. Her name was Sharon Shubin. She didn't never sing. I think she was there. I don't know why she was there, but she did have a good. She had one suggestion. She said, "Look, you guys, you should listen to the Minutemen." And the Minutemen were a band that all their songs are 60 seconds and less. And we started listening to that, and then we thought that's a good idea. And there were 3 of our songs that were 60 seconds or less. His God was about 60 seconds long. And there was a song called Receive Him, Receive Him, boom, which is maybe 3 seconds. And another song, what was the other one? Salvation. Okay, and those are real quick. That set us apart right there from other thrash bands, from a lot of things. That was just one process. But our big break was when our big break was really when Doug said, "Roger, we need to go see Larry Farkas play." And Larry Farkas was playing in Deliverance at the time, and they were playing a show in Hollywood. And at the time, with what I remember, he was the most hardcore. Larry was really wanting to go in that direction. They still hadn't switched over. Jimmy was steering. They were still wearing spandex pants, and they were trying to cross over. But Larry had the right hand down like James Hetfield. That's a huge part of thrash, is the right hand picking technique, and he was super fast. And once we got Larry in, that changed everything. Larry Farkas has been the musical genius of Vengeance the whole time. Doug was a good songwriter, but the genius was Larry. He took all the songs, he took everything, and they went up a notch. They went up 2 or 3 notches actually. And so I remember the first time we rehearsed was Larry. It was just me and Doug and Larry, and then it was really good. And Larry felt great because he knew what we wanted to go, really hard direction. Then we asked Glenn to play drums temporarily, and he did. And so we kind of we got 4 of us together. And lo and behold, Roger Martinez turned out to be the vocalist, and I remember him from before because he was asking to play in a band. And we were thinking about singers. I never thought about him, and it might have been Bob who suggested Roger. But Roger came out one time, and we were at the rehearsal studio, and he just listened for a little while, and then go ahead, okay, let's go for it. And he went for it, and we knew that was it. You know, I'll spare you the details, but it was hilarious. It was fantastic, and we all knew this was the band. It was exactly what we wanted, because we've been listening to Slayer. Our most, to me, what I listened to personally was the most was the band called SOD, Stormtroopers of Death, and they had an album. What was the name of that album? They had one album, but it was almost like a joke album. But then again, the thrash elements that I was able to grab a hold of were fabulous, and so that's how it began. Right there was the process. We went through quite a few people, and that was the beginning of the band right there. It was we knew it. Once again, it was Roger Del Martin, Doug Fane, Larry Farkas, Glenn Mancaruso, and Roger Martinez. And I want to say right now that in the very beginning, people would get me and Roger mixed up. Who was who and who, because Roger Martin, Roger Martinez, pretty much the same name. And that's when I started going about Roger Del Martin. That was my whole, that was the whole motivation. And once I put that in my name, then people could really, they separated to a Roger Dale instead of Roger Martinez. And Roger was always called Martinez. Very few people called him Roger. I was Roger Dale and he was Martinez. So back in those days, that's how we separated, and that's how that worked. So that was the band, and those five, and we knew it, and that's when things started right there, Kim.
If I could back up for 1 second with your band Emerald, did you guys ever do any kind of studio recordings or anything with that band?
Yes, we did. We did an album just called Emerald. No, Armed for Battle. The name was Emerald Armed for Battle. At the time, it cost a lot of money to record, and all four of us, there was a singer, and we just put our money together, and we did this album. And after I recorded the album, I recorded everything. I left the band, and I left my money in the album, but I knew it was time to go, and I didn't care about the cash flow. I knew it was time for me to leave, and I left. And that album has since went on. It's a very iconic album, and people love it. And then like an original copy will go for $600 or $700, and it was a great album. There was reasons I feel that we did not succeed. I don't even know if I should go into those. In fact, I won't go into those, but I think there were some plain reasons to that. And that's one of the reasons I left also, because it was great music, a great album. And we did record, and thank God. And some other guy did the bass parts. He redid some bass parts. When Dave wanted to, there was a European record company, maybe from Germany. They wanted to reissue the album, and one of the things they said, well, you got to have Roger Dale on the bass, and so they put my tracks back in there. Maybe one of them won for me. I can't remember. But, so I was. It worked out to where I got some of my money back. But that was Emerald. They taught me how to work hard. We rehearsed every night, except for Sundays. And if we had a gig, we didn't have that many gigs. We were a big fish in a small pond. They stayed in the Inland Empire and didn't really conquer Hollywood, and that was a huge downfall. All the money was in Hollywood. It was not out in Riverside. So you got to go where the money was, and we weren't quite in that area. So that was Emerald.
Well, okay, Roger Dale, I was asking you about Emerald because I was just curious in light of Emerald, and I knew the style that it was, just kind of full on metal, kind of coming from that glammy era. but a little bit more, like you were saying, kind of a little bit more mature, a little bit more substance is what I mean.
Okay.
And then the way that Reign of Glory is now, which is just a great straight up metal band, I'm curious, you going from Emerald and going into Vengeance, was thrash something that was easy for you to digest? And did you just, were you like, this is right on?
No, it was very difficult because I wasn't used to the quick moves. I wasn't. Now I could develop the speed, but what I found challenging was the very, very quick. I could just say quick moves. I could go into musical terms, but phews over everybody's head. And but yeah, especially Glenn had a lot of his phrases. Glenn had his own. That's what I remember in the very beginning. And when he was showing me these songs, was his timing. He did a lot of half steps, but he'd throw them in spots that were not common. They were not common for me, and and so that was the challenge in the very beginning, was making these moves that were unorthodox. Uh, the speed would come with practice, but with my head had to get into where things were going. And so that was a challenge. But once I mastered that, I was rocking. Man, I could show you some of this. I don't have time, but I could show you some of this stuff on bass and on some of the stuff that it took me a little while, and then you can understand that. But that was the thing, challenging in the beginning, but I did catch a hold of it pretty quick.
Yes, sir. So my being, like I said, I was 17 when I first heard this album. I'm 52 now. Came out in '88, snatched up the cassette. My education to thrash, and I do remember the term speed metal, was Metallica, of course, and then Deliverance, and then, Vengeance. And of course, this album was a thrashterpiece. I mean, it's awesome. To me, Roger Dale, this was an instant classic in every way. And it was classic because it was heavy with hooks, and both of those start with a capital H. Roger Dale, I'd like to ask, and you alluded to this a little bit. We were blessed recently, Rex and myself, we're blessed with an interview with George Ochoa. And George mentioned that Vengeance was always very special to Pastor Bob. And I was just curious, you mentioned a little bit about Pastor Bob kind of with you guys. What was the vision for Vengeance? How did you all and Pastor Bob kind of work together? Because you guys not only brought the full-on music, you also brought the full-on message. So I'm just curious how all that was interacting back then.
Well, Pastor Bob, he basically did it all for us. It was his vision. He had seen bands after bands. We probably had 30 bands going to Sanctuary, and they were all heavy metal bands. And but he saw the need for it. He saw the need for it, and the timing was perfect for it. Now I'll tell you some of the stuff. We had, once we got the band together, we had like 5 songs, and we were kind of working on a demo. And Pastor Bob called us in his office, and he did quite for all the time. He said, "Look, it's time for you guys to play a show." And we said, "We don't have enough material. We've only got 5 songs, and a couple of them were those real short ones, And he said, "It doesn't matter. Go out there and play." And we played to. It was a Friday night, and Neon Cross was headlining, and then we asked them if we could play after them, which is a general rule. Nobody sees the last band. There'll be 5 or 6 bands, and the last band will go on to like 11 or 30 or something, and everybody would leave after the headliner. But nobody left that day because there was a buzz about it, a buzz about a speed metal band. Everybody knew all of us from different bands, and Larry was in Holy Soldier, so we were very recognizable musicians in the Sanctuary crowd, and so they'd heard about it. And once we played the show, and we did not have a good response. There really wasn't a good response at all, and it was a packed house. and it was just too much. I don't know if you've ever seen Jimi Hendrix play Monterey Pop Festival.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a point where he breaks his guitar, and people are not. They're just like they're in the audience with their jaws dropping. They're almost scared. They don't know what to do. It's the same exact situation as when Jimi Hendrix burned his guitar. It was like they're going, this guy, what's that? The guitar's worth $300. I'm not going to do that. And so they almost everybody thought we'd cross the line. And because of how we did our stage show, Martina's vocals, it was really, people had heard speed metal, but we was all the way hardcore. We were hardcore more than most of them, and we wanted to be. Martina's, he had been studying it for years. I mean, it was like maybe 3 years or 2 years when he asked me to play. So he was way into that. And but that was Friday night, and I remember after the show, I mean, we went nuts, we went ballistic, and it was just crazy. But there was just like the jaw hanging out, and kind of slobbering out one side of the mouth, and that was it. So the next day, Bob said, come in the office, this is Saturday, and then he asked us about everything. He said, well, man, I don't know, you guys, this is too much, the vocals and everything. And once he found out that our hearts were right, well, then he said, okay. He just wanted to make sure we weren't trying to diminish. We were trying to diminish. It was our main focus, and it really, really was. And so on Sunday, the day after, he said, look, everybody that was there, which most people were there, this is legit. And we're going to do this thing. And so at that point, Sanctuary was behind us. When I say Sanctuary, we're talking about 800 or 900 people, like instant fans. And they embraced us at that point. Once Pastor Bob put his thumb on it and said, okay, we're good, because nobody ever seen that before. Believe me, it was we put it on really hard. And so I remember they embraced us so much that our next gig, it might have been a week later or something, but we had so many roadies. Roadies are a big thing for a band. We had so many volunteers for roadies, we had to turn them away. And that was one of the things that was difficult for a band, is get somebody to haul their equipment. And you needed that. But that's Bob. George was right. He was really into the band because he saw the impact, he saw the need, and he saw the timing for Vengeance. It's all about the perfect timing and the perfect guys. And we were all at the perfect time in our physical lives, if that makes any sense, in our emotional lives, in our spiritual lives. It was the perfect timing for all of us to be in this band, and it was the perfect time to start something new and go where no band has gone before. It was always very, very spiritually minded, in my mind and everybody's mind. That's why it succeeded, because we did not get off the track. And in fact, Glenn didn't like the music at all, Glenn Mancuso, and he just wanted to do it temporarily but once he saw how much ministry was going on, it was crazy. I mean, I could go on and on. I want to answer your questions, but I have so much head knowledge up here about stuff that's going on. Let me shut up. Ask me another question, okay?
No, it's Roger Dale. It's all good, brother. That's why we're here.
Yeah, we're enjoying this. This is awesome.
Is a classic, and we're celebrating.
Okay. Now, I'll say this so I won't forget, but we were very, very ministry minded. At one time, we had distribution in Europe, and well, here's what Sanctuary did. Sanctuary embraced us because we finally made the album. I might be getting ahead of the questions, but we made the album and we had a 1-800 number on the album. And the album was all scripture. What Martinez put on there was just Bible studies. And of course, back then people used to really sit down and listen to albums and they wanted to know the lyrics. And here was the ministry. Once they read the lyrics, because you couldn't decipher them, they're reading the Bible. They're reading complete, great Bible studies. And that's how people got saved by the word of God. See, that was it. And nobody had done that before either. And so once we had distribution in Europe, we had bags and bags and bags of mail, actual mail. And I remember at the time looking at all these trash bags full of mail. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to look at this. I'm not going to look at any of it because I did not want my head to swell because I had to actually get out of the room, and I never did answer any. We had people answering letters and things, but I didn't. That's how much ministry minded I was. I couldn't let myself go that route. Like, wow, how popular we are. So right off the bat, it was ministry, and the whole time, even when we were on tour, we survived a lot of stuff because we were ministry minded, if that makes sense. You can go on tour and there's things that will want to attract you. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, all of those. And of course, Doug and Larry were babe magnets at the time. And there still was a drug scene. There still was all that, but we survived all that. We really had it going on. We'd have Bible studies and everything. So that was another a part of our success. And of course, Pastor Bob was crazy about us because we saw major ministry and it happened real fast. We took off real fast. And I didn't see it as a band taking off. I saw it as a ministry taking off. Because before that, I'd taken pastoral studies, and me and Glenn were both in pastoral studies, which was a course designed for those who were thinking about being pastors. Okay, and that was where I was at. But it went really quickly, and then I want to answer your questions and not go off. So I know you got another one on your list.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, Roger Dale, I mean, Human Sacrifice, it is rightly so one of the most celebrated metal releases under Christendom's umbrella to this day. Now, as is behind you, Roger Dale, currently there are packages available celebrating the 35th year anniversary. It's being put out by Rocks Records. Some of those packages are already sold out. Roger Dale, what were your thoughts upon initially completing the album all those years ago? Did you feel like you had something special on your hands?
Oh, we knew it. We knew it. We knew it before we recorded. It was miraculous. I mean, I don't know how many bands I've been in. Gosh, hundreds. And we took off in the people's hearts. We started a movement very quickly. I can't explain how fast it was, and I just considered it ministry. And before we went in that album, our demo tape was blowing doors. We had a 5-song demo tape, but man, people were using it, handing out. That's when the ministry started with the demo tape. And that demo tape was magic. When we recorded it in one day, it was magic. And the production was what we wanted. Martinez got the screams on the end of Beheaded. So, actually recording the album was really easy. We'd rehearsed so much. We were tight. Me and Glenn, I mean, he finished his stuff in one night. I finished my stuff in one night. And so we had it done in about a week. And we knew we had something special, not after we recorded it, but as we were recording it and before. It was a lot of fun in there, and we'd all had studio time before, so it wasn't like we were nervous for being in the studio. We were excited, and we did. Yeah, Ken, we did. We knew we had something special there. For
So
sure.
this album right here, Human Sacrifice, Roger Dale, y'all recorded this in roughly 1 week?
That's what I remember, and I know I did mine in one night, in one session, and Glenn did his all in one session.
Sure. Well, what was the budget like?
I don't remember. It was back then. I learned about record companies, and record companies are basically a bank. They'll let you borrow money, and then you pay them back. And they say, "Well, you're going to have to go to a record. You're going to have to go to this. We recommend this recording studio over here, and it costs, I don't know, $100 an hour or whatever." But I learned later that they owned the recording studio, so.
Right.
It was, we had a real good producer at the time, Dave Hagbar. Things changed. No, actually recording it, we worked with our producer, you could say, was Caesar Kalinowski.
Yeah.
But Dave Hackbarth was the engineer. He's the guy who runs and he was a great guy to get along with, and he did what we wanted, we hear what we asked for. And Caesar didn't do a whole lot as far as being a producer, other than, keep us in line to not get too crazy. I had no interest in the recording process, twisting the knobs or anything. My interest was getting my bass down flat, right on the money. And there was you had to get it on the money. You had to get the vocals on the money. There was no auto tune or any of that kind of stuff. You weren't moving things from place to place. And that was my focus. My focus was on my tone. My focus was on my performance in the studio. And after that, I didn't care. I've never wanted to tweak knobs. I never get on the drum set. People marvel at me. Roger, I've never seen you on the. How come you never get on the drum? I said, I have no interest whatsoever on the drum set. So it was all about my bass, and as you said, Kent, laying down low end foundation.
That's right. I remember you were describing it. Talking about Reign of Glory. One of your phrases really stuck with me. You said, "I'm here to hold down the fort," and I've never forgotten that. So,
Well,
Roger,
yeah.
could I ask a question, Roger, about the artwork? When I saw that at the record store, I didn't need to even think about that was going to be, I knew it was going to be super heavy. Who came up with the idea for the record artwork and all that? Was that a whole band effort, or was one specific person had that idea?
I can't really remember, but the whole thing came from Sanctuary. We used to do a reenactment of the crucifixion, and Chris Kane would do the makeup. He was a makeup artist from Hollywood, and we would do the live thing. I don't know what you call it, but we did that at Sanctuary at Easter time. Christopher King was the guy who did that, and it was Bob's hand, and I really don't know. That wasn't that big of it was a big deal for a lot of people, but for me, I thought that's I didn't find it all that shocking and stuff like that, but a lot of other people did at the time. And he did a great job. It was, I guess you didn't see that human sacrifice and the whole, everything about it. Yeah, it was pretty hardcore, but I'd been to all these thrash concerts, so it wasn't that hardcore to me. Some of those album covers are like, oh man. But it was good for its time. It wasn't too much. I mean, it was on the edge of being too much, and some Christian bookstores said it is too much, but they would still sell it under the counter. And then it got to where they wouldn't have anything to do with it. So I think that was a good move too, and iconic album cover for sure. Yeah.
So Roger Dill, during this time, when after Human Sacrifice was released, and of course, it took off, and like a locomotive that it is, what was life on the road like performing with Vengeance? Were you guys on the road full time, or was it kind of the weekend, as they call them, flying
No,
dates?
no.
Or
Now, before we went on tour, we'd do a lot of fly out dates. And Austin, Texas loved us. There was a promoter down there it was a woman, and she was fantastic. And just the town of Austin embraced us. And Doug Van Pelt's from Austin, and Heaven's Metal magazine, that was from Austin. We did a lot of fly outs there. But when we actually went on tour, we had a lot of problems. It was hard work. It was very, very difficult. Our transportation was crowded. Our trailer was not heavy duty enough, and it was crowded. Yeah, it was very difficult. We played a lot of difficult shows. We were in difficult places. We had shows that were canceled, and people helped us. We had help from our friends, or we had help from our brothers and sisters on the road, but it was nothing smooth about it. There was hard times. We figured out you better have a sleeping bag and a pillow, because we were on the floor half the time. We figured that out real quick. Some places were great. And sometimes, well, yeah, it was tough. It really was tough. Now, we were all together in one accord. As far as once again, it was a ministry driven. If it was music driven and profit driven, we would have quit. We'd have turned around and quit, but we didn't. We saw, for me personally, the only good thing about that first and second tour was playing the shows. And oh my gosh, unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. We were one of the successes. One of the reasons that Vengeance was successful was our live show. Nobody was as ballistic as us. We began. There was headbanging at the time, but we were the first band in the whole world who did windmills, and that started with Doug. Doug started doing his windmills, and then me and Larry followed suit. Larry could actually do figure eights, which that was new. But there was something else that was very, very valuable to us. We didn't turn down. Now, at the time, and it's kind of tragic, but with these tubes amps and stuff, you get the goods when you turn up. When you get the goods when you're really, really loud. And at the time, there was a big PA system. Okay, you turn it down, we'll put a microphone here, we'll put a microphone here, and I'm going to make you sound beautiful. Well, we didn't do that. What we did is we didn't turn down. You know what? You could put the vocals through the PA system, and we did not. And that was good for us, because back then, people would go to the front of the stage. Okay, and if you're in a place where you're turned down on the front and the PA system's up in the air, the people who really want to be there the most, they don't get the goods. They don't hear the PA system, and they hear the drum sound. But one of the reasons we did that, because Glenn was such a hard hitter, and Glenn was so loud, and then plus we wanted the goods out of our amp. We pretty much plugged straight in with 100-watt heads, and I had a 300. We were loud. We were freaking loud, and those on the front of the stage, they got what they wanted. If they were a fan of Larry, they would go on Larry's side and get completely blasted. They were a fan of Doug's. Now for me, I had cabinets on both sides of the stage, so bass was in your face, to say the least. And that was a core. That was one of the successes of our band, and nobody could. And I'll brag on it. Nobody could follow us. Nobody wanted to follow us. Oh my gosh! I can tell you. But that was our live show. Our live show was what did it. Now, a lot of times, for me, like when Van Halen came out, Van Halen's first album, I thought, ain't no way that Eddie can play. He's sitting on a chair, you know, he's got his head right here above the headstock and he's playing this stuff. But when I saw Van Halen on stage, man, they're all over the stage. I'm going, how do they freaking do this? Well, we could pull off the album on stage by going ballistic too. And that had to do with really hard work. That had to do with doing this every night. And we played in unair conditioned places, and you know, and so we were really, man, we were trained to do what we did to do. And once again, the volume thing. The people who wanted to be there, once again, they got the goods, and we didn't care. We did not care. I mean, we love the sound guy, but we don't care. Nobody's going to turn us down, and they didn't. And once they figure out we want to do it, and we had it. I mean, that was a big thing. So I wouldn't advise bands to do that nowadays, but it worked for us.
Well, Roger Dale, were you guys mostly playing in clubs at this time, or churches, or a little bit of both, or what was your prominent venues to play at?
We played everywhere that dared to let us. I mean, the clubs, we played clubs. We played San Pedro a lot. There was a place called the Water Clubs. It was hardcore. We played Jezebels. We played venues, if anybody, however, any promoter could put together. Not a lot of churches, you know. Now, if we played a church, it would be a church like Set Free Ministries, which was wherever they could set up. And they were a punk church, not a heavy metal church. We were greatly influenced by the punk influence, but we were greatly influenced by Orange County. And when it comes to the history of speed metal, you got heavy metal from Los Angeles, you got punk from Orange County, and sooner or later it's speed metal and thrash. That's how that worked. And when we were looking for players, we were down in Orange County a lot. But of course, I'm glad it didn't work out, but that was part of our musical education too. Punk rock,
yep. That
was a big part of it. And we embraced that. We looked at it and we talked to people, and that was a big thing for it too. But we did, one time we played at church. We played a church on tour, and they had these great big, like 6 foot tall, fake green plants. We set them on fire. We melted them, and we didn't get invited back. I don't know why. The flash pods and everything. We're sorry.
That is awesome.
But after that, I guess they got the word, but there wasn't very many churches after that.
This church is on fire. That's awesome, Roger Dale. So, okay, now I had the initial cassette, and when it came out, and circa 2010, there was the first remaster of this album, and then I've got the gold disc. Roger Dale, the one that I don't have, there is an unreleased first mix, which surfaced around 2018. Roger Dale, stylistically, how does that unreleased first mix, which has since been released, how does that differentiate them from the actual studio album?
It was a lot drier. The studio album had a lot of effects. It was hosed down with effects as far as what we wanted. Our first attempt was basically, it was Dave Hackbarth on it was no producer. It was just us with Dave. And Dave was like, what do you guys want? What do you guys want? And the guitars had very little reverb on it. It was a true thrash album. You could hear it. To me, it was much more transparent than the other mix. What happened is we were rocking. We were very happy with the first mix, and then somebody bought some other record company bought it, and I don't know who it was. And I didn't keep up with that, Kent, but somebody bought it and they said, this is not going to work. This is not our formula. And so they got a guy his name was Ron Gowdy. He was a producer, and he put all the effects on it. He put effects on the drums, and it ended up sounding a lot more. For us, it didn't sound as good. It sounded weaker to me. But there was one song, Mulligan Stew. Yeah, Mulligan Stew had I liked the production on that. The other ones I don't, but it was perfect. But Mulligan Stew was a slower song. It was ding 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 bow. It was at a slow groove.
Yes,
so you could use that production on it, and it sounded great. But believe me, that was one of maybe the only one that was a slow groover. But I'm glad that they found it, and I'm glad they put that out, because that was the original intent.
You know what was interesting though, Roger Dale, in talking about Mulligan Stew, I have always, the song I Love Hating Evil, the introduction to that song, and you guys being a thrash band, but that is so beautiful. The introduction and going into I Love Hating Evil before it starts cranking up, it's very surprising. It's like almost like a classical music movement with your instrumentation going into that.
We, as musicians, even though we were young, we were very seasoned, and we knew about contrast. We knew, like, we listened to some albums, and it's just, and by the end of the album, it didn't even sound fast. It was just like I'm burnt toast. But if you throw the real soft melodic stuff in there as a contrast, man, it sounds so much heavier and it sounds so much faster. And also, this was Doug's idea to put this in there. And I remember, okay, I gotta sync up with Glenn's kick drum. And if you listen to that again, every bass note I play is right there with his kick drum. Boom, boom, boom. And I was able to put in one of my Mel Shocker licks in there. If you listen closely, you'll hear that lick closer to home. And he ripped that off from Jimi Hendrix band. Okay, so anyway, a lot of these licks you hear, they were written in 1910.
69, yeah.
But yeah, see, that's another thing that was unique about the band. We had a blues influence. I don't know if that's one of your questions, but and that set us apart. And plus, we did the short songs that set us apart. There was a lot of things that set us apart, and we had at the time everybody had to have long hair to be a metal musician, and we took it to the waist length, which, you know, if anything's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. I've heard people say. So.
Right.
So we took the long hair to the extreme, and we were pioneers in a lot of areas that helped us. Doug Thane was very creative, and Doug was an influencer. I don't know what the words are, but he was an influencer. He was a trendsetter, and he started the long hair thing. And me and Larry followed suit as far as the bangs out of the Apache cut, and we quit wearing holes in our pants, in our jeans. We got sick of that. And all the colors, we didn't want holes in our pants, and all of a sudden we were different. We appeared different. Our show was different, and we had Roger Martinez that would, man, he was so powerful on stage. As when he spoke, nobody went to the bathroom. Nobody was whispering each other. Man, they were locked in, because and that was a big part of our appeal too. It's like music and non-music. We had space, and also when it came to performance, we were veterans. Even at a young age, we were veterans at performance. We naturally knew performance principles. We knew how to balance the stage. We knew about misdirection. We knew about cutoffs. We knew about these basic performance principles that even today I see bands that they don't have a clue. So we knew how to build the show. We knew how to basically, we knew how to construct it, and we knew how to ride it to the end. We had a roadmap that we followed. We had a little bit of leeway And we gave ourselves some elbow room. But we knew where we were going and how to get there, which set us apart also.
I'm curious, what do you, I mean, this is such a wonderful album. What do you remember about the fan reception once this was released? What type of feedback did you get from, fans, friends, what have you? And I'm also kind of curious, did you guys ever have any kind of a listening party? And was there anybody who maybe hadn't heard you guys? And were maybe kind of shocked by what they heard. I'm just kind of curious about the feedback that you've received over the years or things that you remember when this was released.
I never heard any negative feedback. If there were negative feedback, they wouldn't say anything. Of course, most of the feedback was just 100% thumbs up. They loved it because you either loved it or you hated it. People developed a taste for it, but as a general rule, people don't like coffee the first time they drink it. Oh, it smells good, but it doesn't taste like it smells. I love coffee now, and people started loving the binges once they figured out what made it tick. What made it tick was the power, the aggression. We knew we were doing what God wanted us to do, and there was the power.
Amen.
And the creativity. God gave us the creativity. It was a God-driven thing, of course. The players, and once again, I got to brag on Larry. Larry's a musical mastermind. He took all the songs that we had, and he worked them. He worked us. Larry Farkas was the precision. And he had the right hand. Once again, he could rival James Hetfield when it came to that right hand, really that down picking so fast. And he was so accurate. And he was not a perfectionist, but he was pursued excellent. And he had to have it from all of us. So he was the taskmaster. He was the driving whip. And so we had that. We had all the personalities in the band. I mean, I could go on for days about why we were successful in our. Gosh, can't. Once again, I can't. Everything about that band. You would think businessmen would put it together, like the boy bands, NSYNC and stuff, and Poison. That band was put together by businessmen, and it almost looked like Vengeance was, but it wasn't. It wasn't put together by businessmen. It was put together by Christians who want the ministry. And that's one of the reasons it was successful.
And maybe God meant business with this album,
Oh, yes, he did. He definitely did, because a lot of people, I mean, even in Memorial Fest, I don't know how many people came up to me and said, Roger, gosh, that album, oh man, that's when I met God. And I'm like going, wow. And that's why it has a 35th anniversary. I mean, we're just not a band that, I love that band when I was young and this happened and it reminds me of it. But people's lives are changed. That's where I met God through this band. I remember reading these lyrics in this song, and after the song, I was born again. And all the things that people tell me, wow, it's just, that's why there's a 35th anniversary special.
Well, like you said, so Roger Dale, I was in search of Deliverance's first album because I'd heard them in '87 on the Cali Metal compilation. I had no idea Vengeance existed at the time, and I kept waiting for that first Deliverance, and that came out in '89. But a year prior, I came across this, and I had to snatch it up. And exactly what you said, and I want to make a point to, just in general, people used to argue with me when I was a kid. Well, you say it's Christian rock, but you can't understand what they're saying. Well, it's funny, Roger Dale, because just like you said, me as a young kid, I would investigate the albums, meaning I would pour into the album experience. And I heard you guys playing, and I heard Roger Martinez doing his vocal aesthetics on this album. And I read, and you know what's funny, Roger Dale, is I was that kid. On my jeans, I wrote every word to White Throne, and on that chalkboard at school in drama class, I wrote the lyrics down on that chalkboard. That's what it was about. It was the kids got it. It was God's word, and you guys were putting it in our lingo. And so all glory to the Lord, and thank you all in Vengeance for that. And we're going to move on just a little bit, Roger Dale.
Okay.
This album was no slouch either. We're not going to deep dive into this, but just want to say, great album here, Warfare. You were propelling that with your pulsing bass. Can't Get Out, Frontal Lobotomy. So many great cuts on this album too. Roger Dale, were you guys on the road in support of this album as well?
Yes, we did. We did 2 tours. We supported Human Sacrifice, and then we supported Once Dead. Once Dead was that was a fantastic album too. There's a lot of really good stuff. I'd say it's more pure a thrash album maybe than Human Sacrifice. Had a lot of different elements to it. Whereas it seems like Once Dead was straight ahead. I mean, we did a cover of Deep Purple just for fun, but other than that, it was
Space Trucking. So Roger Dale, my next question about this one is, you guys with the makeup on the front, just like you said, everything you guys were doing was full throttle. I just like to ask, tell us about the makeup and effects for the cover. Was that kind of an all-day affair getting ready, and how did all that?
That was at night time. Actually, that we got there about 1 or 2 in the morning because it was in a garage. It was a garage that built a stage about 3 or 4 foot high in this garage and cut holes in it. So we were actually in holes. And Chris King, the guy who did the hand on the first album, he did all the makeup and stuff. And it was really cold. I remember it was really cold that day. But yeah, that was a big production right there. It took a long time, and Chris King worked very hard on that. And it's hard work putting the makeup on this, being real still and all that kind of. And we were actually posing for the camera and that kind of thing. So it was a garage. It was a garage thing.
Well,
so early in the morning.
Roger Dale, Vengeance certainly was a good thing going, and I'm going to ask a little bit more of a candid question. And of course, we don't look for dirt on our Vodcast, and we always have that pass button on the table. But as somebody who was very interested in the band and loved the band growing up and still do, I'd like to ask Roger Dale, and from your perspective, why did the classic lineup of Vengeance disintegrate? Was it perhaps due to stylistic yearnings or personnel issues, or just a different season comes?
I can speak for myself only. After the second tour, I was out of the band. I felt just like when it was time for me to leave Emerald. In fact, I was playing Austin, Texas, the very last show of the second tour. As soon as the last note hit, I'm running toward the airport. I mean, I'll see you guys later. And on the way home, I thought, well, I'm done. My part. And Vengeance is done. And once everybody got back, they felt the same way as me. I couldn't believe it. And so we were going to disband. And there's a big fiasco about that. And I don't know if we have the truth. I don't know. I mean, I know the truth of it. And then people just do all this. I mean, that's another 2 hours, but man, I could expound on all of that. And if you want a specific question, that's for me personally, I was done. I was done. And I felt like God was done. Okay. And sometimes it's like God will hit and then I'm done. He's done. Let's go somewhere else and do something else.
Roger Dale, trust me when I say I have of the tattoos that I have one band tattoo. And that one band tattoo is none other than the
Die
smiley
Happy.
face and
Oh.
crossbones of Die Happy. It's on my ankle. Roger,
Yeah.
I'd like to ask really quick, what was the catalyst then for Die Happy forming? Because I was pleased to see, four of you guys from Vengeance back together, and it was a little different
Okay.
sound. So what was the catalyst here?
The catalyst there was Doug Thane. So after Vengeance broke up, none of us were going to stay together. We were going to different projects. And I'd already went on to a different project called the Triple Ace Band. I was moving with the bikers. We were playing biker shows. I was already moved way on. And Doug called me, and Doug said, Roger, I've got a record deal. Just me, Doug Thane. You want to make a record? I said, I don't know. Can we make any money? Anyway, we Doug and I had come up with a way to make some cash flow and record an album, and that's what it's all about. He had songs, and it was just me and him, and he had songs, and he said, "Well, ask Larry to play," and Larry played, and then he asked, and so on. It was not. Some people might think, well, they quit Vengeance to put together Die Happy. No, not even close. Nobody had a clue. I would have never have guessed it. And we made the album. We made Die Happy, and I loved it. But I never was in the band. I did it. I did it for the money, and of course I put 100% into it. But after I was done recording, we did a photo shoot, and as you can see, us on four. We didn't have Robin. We had somebody else as a vocalist, and then that didn't work out. Yeah, it's just us four, and with the photo shoot, and Robin was a hired gun, and he did the vocals. He did a fantastic job. And after it was over, I was very happy. I said, "Man, this is a great show." And then I went back to another band, and then I moved to Nashville after that. So. The catalyst was Doug Thane. He went to the same record company, so I got songs, and will you do it? I said, great. He was the only one signed to the record. There was no band signature, no contract with anybody with this band other than Doug. And
Roger Dale, was you moving? So I was always curious because you weren't on the second Die Happy album. Was a lot of that due to your move to Nashville and everything? Is that why? Maybe you
no, a lot of it was, I didn't want to be on that was something I wasn't doing at the time.
Right.
It wasn't like, I was doing something else. And once again, it was a studio project for me. I never wanted to be in the band. I never wanted to do that. And of course they got a great replacement, Greg Chason. He was in Badlands and fabulous. And they did a second album, and I think they did a live album and stuff like that. But I never played with Die Happy. I just played on the album. I enjoyed it. I liked it, and of course, I love working with Doug and Glenn. And I got to do a few things on it that I liked. A celebration song. I got to play some. That was celebration song. Kind of was in the same vein of "I Love Hating Evil," the intro, and. So me and Glenn, once again, we decided to let's lock in the bass and the drums, and that was the best part of the album for me was Celebration.
Well, that's a beautiful song. We actually did a little block party with Rex and myself and some of our friends, and we were doing a thing on power ballads. Our favorite power ballads from metal bands. Celebration was one of my picks. I love that song. Roger Dale, let's move ahead just a little bit here.
Okay.
She did Roxology with the great Nick Layton. I love that guy. Phenomenal guitarist, beautiful soul. Yeah. And you guys also released this beautiful album, wonderful album, Reign of Glory.
Thank you.
Roger Dale, I saw a picture recently with you and Luke Easter, It was on Facebook, and I'm paraphrasing, but it said something to the extent of, pondering possibilities for the future. What might the future hold? Do you foresee anything with Reign of Glory? And how do what ponderings I'm asking were there with Luke?
Well, Ken, that's I think that's a subject for another podcast. Now, I can here's what I can tell you about all about. Of course, Nick and I did Roxology, and we were talking, and Roger, I want to do a melodic metal with vocals because and I was ecstatic. I said, let's do this, and even with some 70s influence, because even now I was tired of the same old stuff. I wanted something. We both wanted something with some serious vocals, and we wanted something with a lot of musical depth. Now, Nick is a trained musician, and he has a lot of bags up his sleeve. And I was looking for Nick as a songwriter, and then when Nick was looking for me as a collaborator. Nick is a great songwriter, and every great songwriter needs a partner to bounce things off of. And he was looking for me, even though he's really good. He's still looking for me, and I was looking. So we worked great together, and we learned how to work together with Roxology, because he could write charts out, and he could write. Man, he's just fantastic. And then he wanted to do this, and I was like, thank God, because you know what? I mean, and these bands are doing their things, but I don't get off of it. I don't. It doesn't satisfy me musically. Okay, and I approached that album in a minimalistic way. I could have done a lot of fills, and something like, here's a song, and here's a bass, and let me throw a fill right here. Then after I record it and listen to it, I go, it doesn't need that. It doesn't need that. I don't want that. And because it might step on some of Luke's lead work and some of his harmonies. I mean, I played a good fill, but I was like, no. And then I would tone it back down, and I'd just go back to driving eighth notes or just the root notes, because that's how we presented it. And on stage, we weren't really writing that album for our own stage performance, but as it turns out, there's lots of musical moments that you can point out, and we have lots of space. A long time ago, people used to marvel at ZZ Top. They go, man, it's only three guys. They sound huge. Well, there was a reason. They were super tight, and they had space. There was space in between their songs. And as a three-piece band, I wanted to create that space. And I can't be noodling on the bass. It's kind of like I have my role. My role was very minimalistic. And so that gave us space. And at Immortal Fest, it was very impressive. We sounded different. We sounded different than the other bands. We looked different in the other bands. I think we had a different attitude. We had an attitude of fun and confidence that I saw. Working with Luke Easter on stage, it just felt natural. And Nick, I don't know what it is. There was for Reign of Glory with Luke, there was a certain chemistry. I felt it. Everybody felt it, and I know we made waves at Immortal Fest. I don't know, how much press or what people thought about us, but I know crowds, and I know stage hands. We had a very short sound check. In fact, they were way behind on sound checks, and we sounded so good that we only had a 20-minute sound check. Let's go, guys, off the stage. And I'm like, wait a minute, my monitors, man. They're like, see you at showtime. And
Get on
so
out there.
yeah, so but we made an impact, and a lot of it were the songs, and I could go into detail about that, but once again, I think that's for another podcast
You bet.
to talk about Reign of Glory, and especially to try to answer your question. Let's wait on that, okay?
You bet.
Roger, I don't know. We're talking about anniversaries, and I don't know if you realize this, but today is the 1 year anniversary of the release of Reign of Glory's record. I don't know if you know that, but August 12th, 2022 is when it was released on Rox Records.
Oh man, well, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, what is this? August? Was it August the 11th?
The
It's
12th.
August the 12th. Yeah.
1 year.
Okay. Now it was supposed to have been out June the 1st, but the problem was we kept firing our drummers.
I remember that.
Yeah, Jim Taffin was the third drummer, and he knocked it out of the park.
Yes,
But
he did.
every time you got to go back to square one with the drummer, and so we were like, hold on, Bill. Rox Records, because I kind of let Bill know. I said, Bill, here's what we got. I gave him a demo tape, and he was like, all right, let's put this thing out, let's do this. And so we had a hard date right here on this certain date. It might have been May the 1st. Well, May the 1st, we had to get another drummer. So we're like, hey, hang on, Bill. And he's like, hold your horses. And so that's why it came out August the 12th of last year. But it turned out really well, and I'm happy with everything about the album. I love it, and we played all 10 songs at a Motor Fest, and it was, for me, it was very, very satisfying, because there's a fire there. It's hard. You can't buy chemistry. I mean, you can buy it and fake it, but when it's there, it's there. And it's there, you guys, and so we'll talk about that next time.
Sounds like a plan. So I've got one more question, Roger Dale.
Okay.
Who's your friend behind you?
Yeah.
Ask that again now.
Who's your friend behind you, Roger Dale?
Oh, this is Jack the cat, and he's a good cat. He's the best cat in the world.
I'm a cat guy too. I've got a couple cats. I really love them. So
yeah, I've got a Maine Coon over there who's a
nice
movie star. Let me see if I can get him. Hang on.
Maine Coons are awesome. They're big.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is Grayson the Thundercat.
Wow.
And he's a big one.
Yes.
Oh my.
Maine Coons are so awesome. Well, friends, before we go to scripture closeout, message from home that Rex is going to bring us. Just want to make mention one more time at roxrecords.com. Rox Productions has put out the 35th anniversary set. There's different box sets for Vengeance, Human Sacrifice that Roger Dale's holding up. And you friends know it's truly a remarkable album. And Roger Dale's going to show us. There we go.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
The best thing about this, well, you get a COA, a certificate of authenticity. Now, mine's special. It says box number 2 of 5. This is not your record. This is promo only. And it has my name, Roger Dale Martin. See, this is my own personal one of 5. So, but the best thing about this is this booklet. This is what makes it. I don't know if you have this or not, but this it really tells a story. You got stories from all of us. Okay, and this is Bill Bafford. This is Pastor Bob. This is Kevin Carruthers of White Throne Magazine. And here's some stuff about the crucifixion and my story. Here's some pictures, cool pictures, really, really cool. And the lyrics to the songs and more cool pictures and stuff, and the discography, the Final Cut Doug theme is telling his story, and some really cool shots right there.
There's Roger Dale doing the windmill.
Oh yeah,
rocksrecords.com.
yeah. Woo, thank God I'm alive today, man. You know, woo,
Little
that
touch
was
of
hardcore.
whiplash.
Oh yeah, and we see people hurt after concert. They'd be, oh my gosh, my God! But we were pros at it. You know, we had our tricks too. Every once in a while, being gay, we'd get the being gay out before we play. No, and that was a good trick. But most of the time, we didn't need it. It was just that's how we were at the time.
Well, Roger Dale, thank you so much for blessing us today. And thank you for blessing us, you know, way back in the day, even before human sacrifice and with Emerald and everywhere in between. So thank you so much, sir. And Rex is going to take us home with the message from home. But before you leave, please stick around one more minute.
Okay.
Well, Roger, as we were just saying, you know, today is actually the 1-year anniversary of, you know, Reign of Glory's All Will Bow record. And the scripture I picked out is from Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 11. And it reads here, the Lord will be awesome to them when he destroys all the gods of the earth. Distant nations will bow down to him, all of them in their own lands. And the Bible talks in several places where everyone will bow down to God, you know, eventually. And I just think that that was also a good name for the record, All Will Bow. It just shows the power of God and all that. So I just, that's my scripture for today for that. And we just thank you for making such wonderful music throughout all the years.
Thank you, Rex. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So friends, thank you so much for tuning in. And it's been a very distinct honor to speak with Roger Dale Martin again. And thanks to everybody in Vengeance. And anyway, we'll close it out, friends. We'll see you on the flip side.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.